Over the past 12 years, James has built Carrington West into a company that regularly wins awards for its employee engagement, including from amazing groups such as Investors and People. I think getting to the bottom of what really matters within a culture today has been a really interesting exercise for myself, and I hope for you too. Hello, welcome back to What a Future. Today we're joined by the wonderful James Fernandes. Now, James is the MD and co-founder of Carrington West, where he's been building that company for 12 years. They're still the fastest growing recruitment company on the South Coast. And at the recent IIP Awards, they won Employer of the Year Platinum status. Now, did you know that only 2% of companies who've applied actually reach Platinum status for the IIP? That's incredible. On top of that, also won the General Employee Engagement Award, which I think is an even better sort of trophy to hold high there. James, really, really grateful to have you with us today. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Absolute pleasure. Well, let's just jump straight in with the question then. You know what's coming. I think everyone knows what's coming by now. But what is the biggest issue affecting the world of work right now?
Yeah, I think I can really talk about ourselves and some of the other connections I have having very, very similar issues. Is that it's kind of employee engagement with the advent of more flexible working and hybrid working. And I think that the purpose that we have at Carrington West is very cultural based, and it's to be the best that we can possibly be. So our why at Carrington West is that we believe in being better every single day in every way. So we really lean on our culture, whether that's through learning and that side of things, to build a culture and to propagate that purpose with hybrid working is really, really tricky. And I don't know what the solution is. I mean, there's never a silver bullet for these things, but it's normally kind of having to do a number of things consistently over time, measuring and getting the feedback. So the single biggest issue is how do you make a culture nice and sticky? How do you drive engagement whilst people are working remotely? Which is, I think, a real big challenge. I've spoken to business leaders in all different sectors, and they're having exactly the same issue. If the culture is not very sticky, you get the retention rates a lot lower, but also you're getting people to pull in the same direction. You're getting your colleagues to believe in the vision and in a bigger kind of journey for the business. So that's what I feel, is probably the biggest issue right now.
Absolutely. I mean, of course, that's an issue fairly close to our hearts at Water as well. I think it's an interesting one because I think one of the big things that's changed in the world that I can see is back in the sort of 70s, 80s, you had and well before, you had kind of armies of people doing relatively repetitive manual jobs even within office workplaces. So you had people in the mailroom, you had people stamping invoices, you had all that kind of thing. And so the way that you engage and incentivize people in that environment is very, very different to the way that you incentivize people in a modern environment where creativity is important. It's not often a question of how much you do, it's how well you do it that is more important as far as the outcome is concerned. And so even more than ever, it's sort of double-edged sword, as you say. You've got these kind of new movements in terms of working from home, working remote, et cetera, flexible working, et cetera. And then on the other hand, you've got even more importance in sort of engagement because, especially as a recruitment company, your output is directly tied to how much effort people put in, I suppose.
Exactly.
So how have you found yourself?
It's very, very different. A lot of what we do can be quite repetitive. And so the ways, it's almost more important to try and engage people within the business and the culture when the job is repetitive. If you can't really excite them by giving them, say, an architect this amazing building to design and get them brought in through that purpose, you have to kind of really dig deep and find a different purpose. So when you're in recruitment, of course, quality is absolutely everything. Because if you're not first, you might as well not taking place.
Yep.
Might as well not taken place in the race. So, but a lot of it is repetitive. And obviously, you've got the compliance, the accounts team, and other bits and pieces, which isn't always going to be exciting. So we replace that with our purpose, which is cultural, and you've got to hire in the right way to do that. So it's still important to try and find really creative ways to make those roles engaging for people, to get them to want to improve and be better, because that's not always easy. And again, that's always been a challenge within recruitment, because it can be repetitive, although exciting in the same way. And you definitely have some real bad days in recruitment. Somebody once said to me, if you have 4 bad days out of 5 in recruitment, that's a bloody good week. Which is, but that's kind of what you live for, is that one day when it all falls into place. So again, engagement has always been so important in recruitment. When companies don't get it right, you see recruitment companies have maybe a 50% retention rate, so they're turning over half their staff every year. We actually achieved 90%, which again you may know through some of the data you see, which we're really, really proud of. But we're seeing that that's going to become much more of a challenge with the issues that we initially mentioned.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I really like your sort of idea there of creating the kind of purpose within the culture as the focal point of why you come to work, as opposed to, in the architect example, it's the kind of the project and the excitement of the project.
Well, one of the heard the phrase, sorry, is that you need a cathedral. This is something that I always say, is that the analogy is that someone walks past a bricklayer, what's he doing? He goes, I'm laying bricks. Walks past the next guy, he's got a big smile on his face, he's putting a lot of effort in. What are you doing? He goes, I'm building a cathedral. They're doing the same job, but one has a big goal and purpose that they're working towards. It might never be completed in their lifetime, but he's going to work with a smile on his face, he's telling his kids what he's doing, and boasting about that, whereas someone else is just laying bricks. So making that difference and giving the people a cathedral to work towards.
Yeah, and that purpose is so important to us, isn't it? Culturally, on a personal, societal level, but also within work. One of the conversations that I often have and find myself having with business owners is say, well, it's all very well if you've got an exciting business. If you're NASA, it's very easy to say we're putting men on the moon. But if you're a smaller company, maybe you're in a less kind of sexy sector, then finding that purpose is a little bit harder. How did you go about kind of working out what was really kind of important and powerful to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it was all part of the reason why myself and co-founder and other directors, why we left our previous employers and moved to Carrington West and really believed in what we were trying to achieve. Is we got to a point in previous employers where we felt that we could just do better. I think previous employers had maybe lost their way in terms of they were working for shareholders rather than actually their employees and their clients. We didn't think everything was, they were making decisions for the right reasons. So we believed we could do better in all of those aspects. And we started out wanting to create the best possible work environment. But you very soon realise that you haven't got the silver bullet. You haven't got all of the right ideas. So how do you actually make the best work environment possible? Is you've got to continually develop and learn as you go, and you get a good feedback loop, which obviously what it helps with. And so it's pretty innate with us. It did take us maybe a few years to really articulate it with our why, which is that we believe in being better every day in every way. But it was always in our DNA because that's why we started the business. But I did a bit of research on kind of working out what the purpose was, because we don't save lives. I mean, we help people find their dream jobs, and that's great. But it's not really it doesn't always resonate with people as well as it can. So there's kind of 3 ways that a company can find its purpose. It could be causal, which is we want to save the world. We want to find new worlds like NASA. And it can be cultural, which will be we want to be the most friendly, adaptable company it can be. We want everyone to come in with a big smile on their face. Or it can be, I think, the other one was maybe, it did begin with C, but I forgot what it's called, but it was like excellence. So we want to be number 1 in what we do. And so you can look at 3 different posts. They're all equally valid because we can't all save the world.
Yeah.
And you can make the workplace a better place to be, is what it's aiming to be. But we can create what we want within our own culture. We've got much more control over that. So when we came to articulate it, we looked at all of these things and found that was what really did resonate with us and all of the people we brought on. And going forward, it's really important to make sure you're hiring the people who that resonates with. Because if you don't, then they can't be engaged. It's something that means absolutely nothing to them. It could be just, one of the signs on the walls. But, you have to hire people who are really hungry. And I think one of the terms, we want sponges, not rocks. People who absorb information rather than just go, well, I know how to do it. And they believe in being better. If you believe in continual development, then you're right for this business. So, it's always been part of the business and our philosophy.
So you mentioned there the importance of hiring the right people to get that and making sure that they have that kind of desire for personal development. What's thinking especially probably back to the kind of key early hires, what was the thing that, how did you find that? How did you assess that with it? Candidate interviews are so short. You've got to work out whether you want to work with this person for the next 10 years within 30 minutes. And it's, how do you do that?
Yeah, well, I think so a lot of our early hires were people we already knew, which obviously made it easy. We didn't have a lot of time to do learning and development and other bits and pieces. When we first started, it was all hands to everything. And everyone was working really, really hard. So we hired people that we knew, and you generally know people and associate with similar people. So we all believed in the same sort of thing. So it was actually quite an easy step to say, look, this is what we're creating, what we hope to create. Do you want to be part of that? And so for some people, it was very easy. The people who would jump for that opportunity, albeit relatively risky, were the people we really wanted. The ones who ummed and ahed, maybe went, well, I want to save a bet here, or I want this, or I don't quite believe in that. That wasn't a big enough pool. So we almost filtered out the wrong people and attracted the right people through, by accident from that sense. But going forward, we do lots of psychometric testing. We are very, very thorough. With our interview process. Normally it's a 3-stage interview process. We're very, very particular because we want sponges, not rocks. So we really dig deep into what makes people tick. And the final part of what we offer when they come in for the final part of the interview is not necessarily an interview, more of kind of delivery of the offer. We give a 4-year plan. And that's a bit of the USP for us against other recruitment businesses. We'll sit down and say, over the 4 years, this is what we expect of you, and this is what you'll get in return. This will be your career path and other bits and pieces. That excites the right people. If someone's coming in and they go, I'm going to do 6 months, try and earn as much money as possible, maybe not leave a great legacy for myself with your comments, then that's not the right person. If someone really wants to work with integrity, do the right things over and over again, and develop as a person, 4-year plan works really, really well. So again, through our process, we're filtering out the wrong people and hiring the right people. And it works most of the time.
Well, yes, we're human, right? We can't get everything right all the time. But I think, that sort of due diligence there is very, very interesting and often isn't done by, an awful lot of people, unfortunately. A lot of companies, it's a difficult position, right, for large companies. If you've... The sort of owner, the founder, the person at the top there can't take every interview if you've got 5,000 staff, and so you have to pass it down, management layers. And then if you have multiple locations, that gets even harder, etc. And so ensuring those values are kept becomes a challenge. But I think your sort of desire and need to do that is powerful. So are you involved with every hire, at least on some level?
For the last probably 2 years, not at all. Any senior hires I'd obviously be involved in. But I think you made a good point where you have to ensure that the people taking that mantle on, doing the interviews, share your values, and they're looking for the right values. So again, it's about training at that point. For the last 2-3 years, we've had what I believe has been a really effective leadership development program. And so at one point, maybe 3 years ago, we started to realise there's beginning as the company's growing, there's a bit of a gap between the senior leadership team, our SLT, and then kind of the TLs, team leaders, managers and things. So we really wanted to close that gap, make that role a bit more aspirational, give someone at that level much more clarity on where they were going within the business. So we developed a leadership development program, which is generally they're done year by year with external speakers, management meetings, coaching, all sorts of things that go on. And so we've been applying that for the last few years to really upskill that middle management, more than just in terms of this is how you recruit, this is how you train people. A lot of it's within mindset as well, about how they can become the best possible managers they can, how they can understand their people better. And we've had some great world-class external speakers come in and go through that with our people. So, yeah, as you say, we've got to make sure that mantle is passed down effectively for people now in charge of hiring our next group of consultants and shared services people.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think what's correct me if I'm wrong, but a couple of years ago you had 60 staff approximately, and so I think on the outside looking in, probably a lot of people say, "Gosh, that's very early to kind of take on that level of sort of training." But that's really what I suppose has led you to being able to be where you are now, without that kind of growing pain moment where the period between kind of 50 and 150 in a company's growth in terms of staff numbers is difficult, because as you mentioned there, you don't get involved with every hire anymore. You can't. You probably still just about know everyone's name, but you don't necessarily know what they did at the weekend, and you can't have that one-to-one. And so you have to form these layers. So I think the fact that you did that so early, hopefully, that means that sort of level of growing pain that you receive there is something that you can mitigate. I think that's very powerful.
Yeah, well, we hope so, and everything that we're doing is kind of a bit of a learning curve for us as well. I've never run a 100-person company before, and every day I'm learning how to be better at it and what that role actually entails. And I think everyone else throughout the layers of the business, levels of the business, are learning at the same rate, which is why engagement and feedback loops and everything like that are so important, because that's what checks and balances what you do. But yeah, it is important, and again, it's a bit of a challenge for growing fast. I used to know what everyone did at the weekend and have really good relationships, which meant when you've got that real big emotional bank account with someone, you can have even more honest conversations. I have to now leave that to the other directors are brilliant at it, but their team leaders and department managers are now having to do a lot more of that, build that emotional bank account so they can have those more candid conversations.
Absolutely. I mean, I think honesty is something that is lacking from a lot of modern workplaces. And it's not necessarily that it's replaced by dishonesty. It's just the lack of information sharing, which gets in the way of community. We mentioned at the beginning here, you said one of the hard things was, about working from home and the effect that that's having. There's a, sort of old, well, Daniel Kahneman was talking about it in his, in his book, that just by being closer to someone, being in the room with someone, the sort of proximity to something or even an idea, it makes you like that thing more. And so if all of a sudden you send everyone off into their own little kind of cubicle, and they don't spend time with those people, then it's not that you can't make those connections. Of course you can. People have very fulfilling, relationships entirely online these days. But if it just becomes harder, doesn't it? So how have you tackled that with regards to sort of working from home? And I'm sure you get a lot of requests for, working from home, probably more. And, what's the...
Yeah, I think we've got lots of people who do work from home. We don't we do a hybrid system rather than any full-time side of things, and it's because we really want to try and protect and maintain the culture that we're building and continue to strengthen it. So we work a lot on trust. I think a business has to run on trust. So you get all of these policies, and I've seen it again in other businesses where you create policies and rules to fit the bottom 5%, the people who take the mick, essentially, who get things wrong. We really push against that. We need to create policies and rules and processes and treat people as if they're trusted. 99% of the time, people then behave in the way that they because they feel trusted, and it's the power of trust within business is very, very important, and we understand that. There's lots of stuff with Stephen Covey, the son of the guy who wrote The 7 Habits. He talks about the speed of trust. It's one of the most powerful things you can have in a business. So we work really hard on building that trust. That's difficult to do if you're fully remote. I think borderline impossible. But we try and encourage a lot of face-to-face times. We do a lot of cross-divisional meetings. We do coaching around the business as well. So every single person has a coach, someone from the level above them, all the way up. So I think I probably coach 4 people within the business, within the leadership team, and so the leadership development program. So everybody feels a bit trusted because they're allowed to go whenever they want at any part of the day, the week, to go off site and do an hour with their coachee. So they feel quite trusted in that responsibility. But the coachee gets to meet someone who's a level above them in a different part of the business and get some great knowledge from them. And also then building that trust. That would never have happened before. So we work really hard on trying to build trust around the whole business. It's much more easy within the divisions themselves. So we do lots of workshops. Each division has a 1 through 5, which is a sort of strategy plan for the year. We all do things like sign-ins where we talk about, we rank ourselves out of 10 for things like business, personal well-being. It allows us to be vulnerable, and we talk about vulnerability a lot within the business. So it's about building that trust. It does then allow for hybrid working to be more effective because you're already trusting, because you can get these keyboard warriors throwing out emails and you can have massive fights. If they were sat next to each other, there's no way they would do that. Like, 1, because they probably like each other more, but 2, because you don't get away with it, do you? But it allows confrontation just to get dealt with pretty easily. So if you have that basis of trust, it is a much more effective way of managing the hybrid working. But it's hard. Trust, like going to the gym or mowing the lawn, it's never completed. You never just go, right, tick that box. We don't have to worry about it again. Trust gets easily eroded over time. And it's normally the 5 and 1 rule. You normally have to do 5 good things to counteract it and 1 bad thing you do. And we all do bad things. We all say the wrong thing from time to time. So you've got to work hard on those 5 things. So yeah, I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's how we try to manage that and continue with engagement. The sticky culture is by sort of managing on trust and working on ways to build trust every single day.
No, I think that's really powerful, and it's always very interesting to understand where people's sort of focuses are, because there's the old saying, if everything matters, then nothing matters, and so you have to focus on that. But I think trust is a really powerful thing for you to focus on, and it's certainly something that we try and focus on here, and we find that's paying dividends. Equally so. But I'm interested to move the conversation now into maybe a slightly more sort of aspirational side of things, and say, okay, let's say we don't have the answers right now. We've established that, but let's say we did, and let's say we've kind of fixed this. We haven't completed trust. We'll never complete trust, but let's say we've got a system that that works. What's the aspiration? What are we aiming for? What's the kind of where will we be in 5 years' time?
Okay, well, we've got a 3-year vision. We haven't quite done the 5-year one, but it's to have the best possible workforce where everybody feels valued, trusted, and supported. And so it's never ever done, and I think that's the thing. But what that will look like is we actually solve the hybrid working situation. I have a feeling there's going to be maybe a bit of a rebound. I think at the moment workers are generally sort of seem to have a bit more of the power in the dynamic at the moment because of the staff shortages. I think that might rebound a little bit more because I don't think it's sustainable in lots of businesses. And if managed poorly, it could really hurt businesses. When it's done well, it is great and I believe in it strongly. But I don't think around quite a lot of businesses it can be done because they don't have the management, they don't have the skills. But talking about if it goes well, we've got a nice routine. We've got people coming in from time to time, really engaging in some of the things that we do. We work really hard on engagement events. So we do, our own quarter parties. We go to Goodwood, a Christmas party. We have a high attendance rate of that, and we try and do enough different activities to ensure that people want to be involved at least some of the time. Right? It's not always just about going down the pub. It can be. We're doing a sports day. The new University of Portsmouth have a new state-of-the-art sports centre, and we're getting that for a day. And we're going to do a big sports day for everyone in the business, our teams and prizes. So that'll be little things like that. So we'll have good attention. People will enjoy coming into work every single day, smile on the face, and we'll be better than ever. But we still understand our development areas, and that we haven't completed it yet. So we still need to be humble. You've got to stay humble with it. So that's what it looks like. I think a nice rhythm with the hybrid working. Everyone's just as effective. People find their work-life blend, which I prefer to use rather than balance, because balance would suggest that they're 50-50. That's not life, unfortunately. So you get a nice work-life blend, and just keep moving the company forward.
Yeah, I think that's really, really interesting. I think what you're saying about those sort of events and being inclusive for everyone. Also, what you're saying about the job never being complete. You'll get to the 3 years, right, and then you'll make the next 3-year plan, and it will be even better. I think a lot of people that I speak to outside of these podcasts, they sort of it always seems to be that they want to get rid of conflict, or they want to make everyone work hard all the time. Yeah. And it feels always to me that this is a kind of slightly naive way to look at it, because we're human and conflict and imperfection is built into us. Not every day is a perfect day. As you said earlier, if you have 4 bad days and 1 good day in recruitment, then you've had a great week. But I think, what's your sort of, view when it comes to, conflict in the workplace and the making of mistakes, or, doing something substandard? How should we, not necessarily on a kind of, operational level, we need to go talk to this person, blah, 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 but, how should we view this as a sort of, kind of working group, I suppose?
Yeah, I think healthy conflict is a positive within the workforce. If you look at the 5 dysfunctions of a team, but we actually run most of our teams based on some of the principles within that, is you've got to build that trust. And you build trust through a number of different ways. Vulnerability is one of them, so we've got to make sure we're vulnerable. That means making mistakes. If you're vulnerable, it's like, I don't know what I'm doing, I've made a mistake, can I have some help? If everybody's saying that, you're not hiding mistakes, you're not trying to get one over other people, you're being open, honest, and helping each other, and it's collaborative. Once you have that, you can then go on to and have healthy conflict. Because if you and I trust each other, I can tell you that I don't agree with that principle, or I don't agree with that project in the way that you're running it. Say, look, can we talk about that? You can take that on board without being too defensive. Then we can have a healthy conflict. If we still continue to run it in the way that you want to run it, that's fine. I've had my say. I can move on and commit to what we're trying to achieve. If and vice versa, if you had to change your mind, you'd always be thankful. But I tell you what, that was really good. We've highlighted some real blind spots there, and we're gonna go forward in this different way. So healthy conflict is very, very important, because without that you won't get commitment. All starts with trust. Trust has got to be the basis of everything you do. And within a company, it's something we work really hard for. It's difficult to obtain fully, but within teams, it's absolutely essential. So if you build that, you can then really encourage, and we do encourage, healthy conflict.
That's really interesting. I mean, I'm sort of sat here thinking, at the beginning, obviously, I asked you what's the biggest issue affecting the world of work, and you mentioned hybrid working and how that goes. I'm wondering whether we can kind of rephrase that answer potentially and say, actually, the biggest issue is trust or lack thereof. And
potentially, yeah. But I think the hybrid working is what's creating the issue.
Yes,
is a potential solution or even barrier to the hybrid working. And trust has always been an issue, and I think it's something that's growing much more within the world of business, that it's recognised that we need to understand the power of trust and the trust dividend. Like, if you're in a trusted team, you come in, you're happier, you work better, you don't leave straight away the moment you can, you're helping each other out, you actually get stuff done quicker because you leave each other, and better. And that's the trust dividend. If you work in a team that you really don't trust, and the environment is awful, you do the bare minimum. You slope your shoulders, you use a bit of a blank culture. So everything takes twice as long and is poorer for it. So, you've got to build that trust dividend. But I think you're right. So trust is a potential barrier or solution to that. Engagement is a symptom, or poor engagement is a symptom of working, the hybrid working not being implemented properly without the trust. And the sticky culture, again, is another symptom. We need sticky cultures, because especially if you've got a job that can be repetitive, why else are they staying there? someone that offers a couple of quid extra down the road, they're going to go there. And you want sticky cultures, not to say we want to pay less than anyone else, but you want someone to, when they have a bad day, be still happy to be working with you. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I spoke quite a lot recently on a podcast about sort of culture and how that works in our sort of society and the way that we see that. I think, this engagement goes two ways, doesn't it? There's the individual benefits of it, which are working related. They're also personal life related. And then there's the company benefits, as you mentioned, things being done faster and better because people care. More innovation, more, fixing of problems, getting rid of the kind of this is how we've always done it and we're going to keep doing it mentality.
Yeah.
Like that's all really powerful. And I think what I'm really getting from you here is the power of this trust. And you hear a lot of people, particularly the sort of old school sort of guard, they say things like, oh well, if you give them an inch they'll take a mile. And I think this has been a pervasive view in the workforce for years, hundreds of years, and yet more and more evidence suggests that actually this is not the case at all, and really all people.
Before about when you create these policies, these rules, and even process for doing things, it's like, there will be one or two people who do take that line, but you don't want to create everything based on that. You want to create all of the systems based on the people you trust and people you want, and you're just going to have to put up with the odd person who takes the mile and then hopefully make them available to industry through a process or a different process they might not enjoy. So yeah, I completely agree. I think it's probably been similar, but people's mindset now is shifting.
I think yes, and the importance of that mindset is becoming more significant as well. Look, it's been a real pleasure to talk with you today, James. It's been a really interesting kind of deep dive into all sorts of elements of culture and engagement and trust as we keep coming back to it. It's been a real pleasure and really enlightening. I'm so grateful to have you with us today.
No, well, thanks for having me, Fraser. Yes, it's been fun.
My pleasure. Brilliant. Cheers, James. Thanks a lot.